17 August 1943, 10:45 in the morning, high above the industrial town of Schweinfurt, Germany. The sky looks calm from the ground, blue, almost peaceful. But at 25,000 feet, the air is alive with vibration. 4 engine bombers push forward in tight formation, their propellers carving white spirals into thin air. The hum is constant, heavy, almost comforting. Inside one of those aircraft, a B-17 Flying Fortress of the United States Army Air Forces, Staff Sergeant Daniel Mercer presses his gloved hand against the cold aluminum wall. The metal trembles beneath his palm. He can feel every pulse of the engines. He is 22 years old, a waist gunner from Ohio. He has never seen combat until this summer. Around him, 10 men work in silence. Lieutenant Robert Hayes, the pilot, stares through the windscreen. His oxygen mask fogs with each breath. In the nose, Bombardier Frank Delgado squints down at the German countryside sliding beneath them. Neat fields, rail lines, factories. The mission briefing had sounded simple enough. Daylight precision bombing. Hit the ball-bearing factories in Schweinfurt. Cripple German industry. Shorten the war. They were told the B-17 could defend itself. 13 machine guns, tight box formations, overlapping fields of fire. The bomber, they said, was built to fight its way through. At first, it almost feels true. The formation stretches across the sky in layers. Hundreds of aircraft, silver wings flashing in the sun. It is an astonishing sight, like a floating city. Daniel leans toward the small window and looks down. Black puffs begin to bloom below. Flak. It starts far beneath them, little bursts that look harmless from a distance. Then the bursts climb, higher, closer. Each one a violent explosion timed to detonate at their altitude. The aircraft jolts. Shrapnel rattles against the fuselage like hail on a tin roof. "Hold formation," Lieutenant Hayes says over the intercom. His voice is steady, too steady. The myth of the easy air war begins to crack. Before this day, many American planners believed that unescorted heavy bombers could survive in daylight. They believed in defensive firepower. They believed that tight formations would protect the group. They believed that German industry, once struck hard, would collapse under sustained pressure. Now, over Schweinfurt, reality rises to meet them. "Fighters, 3 o'clock high," someone shouts. Daniel turns. They come in fast. Dark shapes diving out of the sun. German Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs, painted gray and green, slicing through the bomber stream with terrifying speed. The first attack is head-on. Cannons flash. Tracer rounds streak forward like red comets. A B-17 two ships ahead erupts in flame at the nose. For a moment it keeps flying, as if unaware of its fate. Then the left wing folds. The aircraft rolls slowly and disappears into cloud. No cheering, no dramatic music, just shock. Daniel grips his machine gun and fires in short bursts. The recoil vibrates through his arms. The smell of gunpowder mixes with oil and hot metal. He sees a German fighter flash past, so close he can make out the pilot's goggles. Another explosion rocks the formation. A bomber above them loses an engine. Smoke pours out in a thick black stream. It falls behind. Alone? There are no long-range escorts today. Allied fighters do not yet have the range to stay with the bombers deep into Germany. The fortresses are on their own. In the nose, Frank calls out corrections. Left, left, steady. The bomb bay doors open. A rush of cold air tears through the aircraft. Below, the factories grow larger. The bomb release feels almost gentle compared to everything else. The aircraft lurches upward as the weight drops away. Tiny shapes fall toward the earth. Daniel does not see the impact. He is watching the sky. Another fighter attack slams into them from behind. A burst of cannon fire punches through the fuselage. Metal fragments slice through the waist compartment. One of the gunners screams, then goes silent. The intercom crackles. "Number 3 engines hit." They keep flying. By the time the formation turns for home, the sky behind them is scattered with parachutes and smoke trails. Dozens of bombers are missing. Some are falling. Some are already gone. Hours later, when Daniel's aircraft limps back across the English coast, the sun is lower. The engines sound tired. So does everyone else. On the ground in East Anglia, crews count returning planes. They count gaps. 60 B-17s are lost that day between Regensburg and Schweinfurt. Hundreds of airmen killed, wounded, or captured. The ball-bearing factories are damaged, but they are not destroyed. Production will resume faster than anyone hoped. That night, Daniel sits on his bunk and stares at his hands. They are still shaking. He had been told the bomber would always get through, but now he knows something different. The enemy is not collapsing. The sky is not safe, and the war above Europe is far from easy. October 14, 1943, just after 9 in the morning. Above the North Sea, heading once more toward Schweinfurt. The crews call it another mission. Quietly, some of them call it something else. Second Lieutenant Robert Hayes is back in the left seat. He has flown since August. He has seen what waits over Germany, yet the briefing room is full again. Young faces, replacement crews, coffee cups trembling in nervous hands. On the map board, a red string stretches deep into the Reich. no long-range escort beyond the German border. Again, the early faith in self-defending bombers still lingers, but thinner now, frayed. In the waist of a different B-17, Sergeant Daniel Mercer adjusts his oxygen mask. He recognizes the route. He recognizes the tension in his own chest. It feels tighter than before. Below them, the North Sea is a dull gray sheet. Above, thin clouds drift like torn cotton. The formation assembles slowly, hundreds of aircraft climbing into position, forming combat boxes designed for maximum defensive fire. It is a beautiful structure, clean geometry in the sky. It is also fragile. By late morning, they cross into German airspace. The first flak bursts are distant. The gunners watch them rise. Then the fighters arrive. This time, they do not rush in small numbers. They come in waves. German air defenses have adapted. Radar stations track the incoming stream. Fighter units are positioned along the route. Pilots know where the bombers must pass. They know the altitude. They know the speed. The first pass is head-on again. Cannons flash from the noses of Messerschmitts. The impact is immediate. A bomber in the lead group takes a direct hit to the cockpit. It drops out of formation almost instantly. No parachutes visible. Daniel fires until his barrels glow faintly. A German fighter rolls away trailing smoke, but more take its place. Some carry heavy cannons designed specifically to tear apart 4 engine bombers. Others fire rockets from a distance, exploding among tight formations. The sky feels smaller now, more crowded, more dangerous. Inside the aircraft, the sound is relentless. Metal striking metal, engines straining, the constant chatter of machine guns, oxygen masks hissing. Keep it tight, Hayes repeats. But keeping it tight means staying exposed. A damaged bomber cannot simply dive away. If it leaves the formation, it becomes an easy target. Hours pass like this. Attack, regroup, attack again. By the time they reach Schweinfurt, the formation is already thinner. Bombs fall. Smoke rises from the industrial complex below. Flames lick through sections of the factory roofs. Yet, even as the bombs drop, fighters continue their assault. The return journey is worse. Without escort, the bombers are hunted all the way back to the coast. Fuel runs low, ammunition runs out. Daniel squeezes the trigger and hears only a hollow click. Empty. He looks out and sees a B-17 behind them fall into a shallow dive, 2 engines burning. It does not recover. When the surviving aircraft finally cross back over the North Sea, many are alone. The great formation that set out in the morning has shattered into scattered groups. Back in England, ambulances wait beside the runway. Ground crews count again. This time the number is staggering. 60 B-17s lost in a single day over Schweinfurt. More than 600 airmen missing. The mission will be remembered as Black Thursday. In the mess hall that evening, the mood is different from August. There is no talk of quick victory from the air. No easy predictions. Major Thomas Caldwell, an operations officer, studies casualty reports under dim light. He runs a hand through his hair and stares at the numbers. The math is brutal. At this rate, experienced crews will vanish faster than they can be trained. He knows something has to change. The idea that bombers alone can break enemy industry is colliding with reality. German factories repair damage. Production disperses. Air defenses grow stronger, not weaker. The air war is becoming a contest of adaptation. Daniel lies awake again, listening to the wind outside the barracks. He thinks about the men who did not return. He thinks about the long stretch of sky where no friendly fighters appeared. He wonders what it would feel like to see Allied fighters beside them all the way to the target. For now, that reach does not exist. But far from Schweinfurt, engineers and planners are already working on the problem. In factories in the United States, a new fighter is rolling off assembly lines. Sleek, long-ranged, different. The lessons written in smoke over Germany are forcing change. The bombers have burned. Now the strategy must evolve. January 11, 1944. 8:20 in the morning. Runways in eastern England shimmer under a pale winter sun. A different sound fills the air this time. Not the heavy rumble of 4-engine bombers alone, but the sharper, impatient growl of single-engine fighters warming up beside them. Captain James Walker sits in the cockpit of a P-51 Mustang, gloved hands resting lightly on the throttle. Frost clings to the edges of the canopy. He wipes a small circle clear with his sleeve. He has flown short-range escorts before, turning back at the German border, watching the bombers continue alone. He hated that moment, the helpless turn-away. Today, he does not plan to turn back. Under the wings of his Mustang hang drop tanks, silver and swollen with extra fuel. The solution had not come quickly. It took engineering, experimentation, loss, and hard arguments among commanders. But now the fighters can go the distance. Behind him, rows of B-17s and B-24s lift into the cold sky. Their mission, strike aircraft factories and assembly plants deep inside Germany. This time, they will not be alone for long. In one of those bombers, Sergeant Daniel Mercer feels the familiar vibration through the floor. He has flown enough missions now that fear has changed shape. It no longer spikes suddenly. It settles in quietly before takeoff, like a shadow that never quite leaves. He looks out and sees something new. Small shapes climbing above and around the formation. Mustangs, thunderbolts, light on their wings. For the first time, the bomber crews sense a shield forming. The bomber stream crosses the Dutch coast. Flak begins again, precise and disciplined. But when German fighters rise to meet them, they find company waiting. Walker sees them first, specks ahead growing larger. Messerschmitt's climbing hard, hoping to reach the bombers before the escorts can interfere. "Stay with them," Walker tells his wingman. "No chasing too far." The doctrine has changed. Earlier in the war, escorts were ordered to cling tightly to the bombers, reacting only when attacked. It limited their effectiveness. Now, commanders allow greater freedom. Fighters can sweep ahead, disrupt German formations before they form coordinated strikes. Walker pushes the throttle forward. The Mustang surges. The engine's sound shifts from steady growl to full roar. The first clash is fast and violent. German fighters break formation as Mustangs dive through them. Contrails twist across the sky. Machine gun fire flashes in brief, bright lines. Aircraft roll and climb in tight spirals. Daniel hears it over the intercom. Fighters engaged. He risks a glance and sees Allied fighters weaving among German aircraft, forcing them to break away from clean attack runs. The head-on assaults that once felt unstoppable now scatter under pressure. Not every bomber is saved. Flak still reaches them. A B-17 off their right wing takes a heavy burst and begins to fall behind. Smoke trails from two engines, but this time, when German fighters move in to finish it, Mustangs intercept. The damaged bomber gains precious minutes. Sometimes that is enough. On the ground in Germany, radar operators track the incoming wave. They report not just bombers, but heavy fighter presence. The defensive equation is shifting. Walker chases a Focke-Wulf in a steep dive. The world narrows to engine noise in the small shape ahead. He fires in controlled bursts. The German fighter rolls away trailing smoke and disappears into cloud. He does not celebrate. There is no time. Fuel remains a constant calculation. Even with drop tanks, every mile matters. Walker glances at his gauge and turns back toward the bombers. Above the target, bombs fall again. Explosions ripple across factory complexes that once operated with relative confidence after quick repairs. Now the attacks are more frequent, more sustained. The difference is not just in damage, it is in pressure. German fighter units, once able to concentrate solely on bomber destruction, must now defend themselves. Losses mount on both sides. The sky becomes a battlefield in its own right. Back in the bomber, Daniel feels something unfamiliar. Not safety, never that, but balance. The bombers are no longer isolated giants. They are part of a combined force. When the formation turns for home, Mustangs remain overhead. Some peel away only at the last safe moment, engines running low but still guarding the retreat. As England's coastline appears ahead, Daniel exhales slowly. The losses are still real. Empty spaces still mark where aircraft should be. But the scale feels different from August, from Black Thursday. In briefing rooms that night, officers review reports. German fighter interceptions disrupted earlier than before. Bomber survival rates improved. Targets struck with greater consistency. It is not an easy air war. It never was. But adaptation is taking hold. The bombers burned. The crews paid in blood and fear. Yet from those losses came change. New tactics, longer range escorts, a shift from rigid defense to aggressive air control. The sky over Europe is still deadly. Only now it belongs to no one uncontested. February 20, 1944. Shortly after noon. Above central Germany. Cloud layers drift below the bomber stream, broken in places like torn fabric. Through the gaps, rail yards and factory roofs flicker into view. On the ground, air raid sirens wail across cities that have heard them too many times. In the air, the campaign has entered a new phase. They call it Big Week. The target is not just one factory or one city. It is the entire German aircraft industry. Assembly plants in places like Leipzig, Regensburg, Augsburg, engine works, component factories, the system itself. Captain James Walker's Mustang cruises high above the bomber formation, contrail stretching thin behind him. He scans constantly. The sky is clearer today, but that does not mean safer. Below him, the heavy bombers move in steady waves. B-17s, B-24s, hundreds of them. In one of those bombers, Daniel Mercer feels older than his 23 years. His flight jacket is worn at the collar. His eyes move differently now. Less panic, more calculation. He knows what flak sounds like before it hits. He knows the shape of an approaching fighter. He also knows something else. German resistance is changing. The first attacks come early. Radar-guided defenses coordinate flak with fighter intercepts, but German fighter units are stretched thinner than before. They must respond to repeated strikes across multiple regions, day after day. Walker sees a cluster of German fighters forming ahead, trying to climb into position. He radios his squadron. Push them back before they form up. Mustangs dive in disciplined pairs. They do not chase recklessly. They break formations, disrupt timing. Even forcing a fighter to turn early can ruin a coordinated head-on pass against bombers. Inside the bomber stream, Daniel watches as a German fighter attempts a rocket attack from distance. The rockets streak upward, leaving white trails. One detonates near a B-24, rocking it hard but not destroying it. Moments later, two Mustangs slash through and the German fighter breaks away. The battle now stretches miles across the sky. It is not a single clash, but a series of rolling engagements. On the ground, bombs begin to fall across aircraft plants that build Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs. Production halls are shattered, assembly lines disrupted, machinery damaged, skilled workers killed or displaced. German industry does not collapse overnight. It disperses. It improvises. It moves production underground where possible. But constant pressure forces difficult choices. Defending the homeland pulls fighter units away from other fronts. Fuel becomes scarcer. Replacement pilots receive fewer hours of training before combat. Daniel's bomber takes a hit from flak that tears a jagged hole near the tail. The aircraft shudders. The tail gunner reports minor control damage, but stays in position. They press on. Below, smoke rises in thick columns from multiple targets. It is not one dramatic explosion. It is cumulative damage, repeated strain. When the formation turns west, Walker notes fewer coordinated fighter attacks than earlier missions. Not gone, never gone, but thinner. The air war has become a war of endurance. Back in England, intelligence officers analyze photographs taken by reconnaissance aircraft. They measure crater patterns, count damaged buildings, estimate production delays. The numbers tell a story that Daniel and Walker feel in their bones. The early belief that one decisive strike would break enemy industry was an illusion. Factories proved resilient. Air defenses proved lethal. Now the strategy is different. Sustained pressure, long-range escorts, flexible fighter tactics, targeting not just buildings, but the network that keeps them running. Rail lines, fuel depots, assembly chains. It is not dramatic in a single moment. It is relentless over time. Weeks pass. Walker notices fewer German fighters rising to meet them on some routes. When they do appear, many are flown by young pilots with limited experience. Their maneuvers are sharp but less coordinated. Daniel flies another mission over Germany and realizes something unsettling. For the first time, parts of the route feel almost empty. The sky that once seemed crowded with attackers now holds more open space, but he does not mistake that space for safety. He has seen too much. The cost has been enormous on both sides. Bombers lost, fighters lost, civilians on the ground caught beneath falling explosives. Industrial cities scarred. There is no triumph in the cockpit. Only fatigue. By the spring of 1944, the air campaign has reshaped the battlefield. German fighter strength over Western Europe is diminished. Factories struggle under constant repair cycles. Fuel shortages grow sharper. And beyond the horizon, another date approaches. June 6, 1944. An invasion will cross the English Channel. When it comes, the sky above Normandy will matter as much as the beaches below. The air war that once seemed uncertain is now tilting. Not because it was easy, but because it was forced to adapt. June 5, 1944. 11:30 at night. An airfield in southern England hums under blackout lamps. Low clouds move in from the Atlantic. The wind smells of rain and fuel. Ground crews work in near silence, their shapes half hidden in the dark. Captain James Walker stands beside his Mustang, helmet tucked under one arm. He looks toward the coast, though he cannot see the water from here. He knows what lies beyond it. France. Tomorrow, before dawn, Allied forces will land on the beaches of Normandy. The largest amphibious invasion in history. Soldiers, sailors, paratroopers, tens of thousands of them. And above them, the sky must be controlled. Walker climbs into his cockpit just after midnight. The engine coughs, then catches. Around him, rows of fighters begin to roll forward in disciplined lines. Not far away, Sergeant Daniel Mercer straps into a B-17 for what feels like his 100th climb into darkness. The bomber is loaded not for deep industrial targets tonight, but for transportation hubs, rail yards, bridges, the arteries that feed German defenses in northern France. The strategy has matured. No one speaks now of one decisive blow that will end the war from the air alone. The lessons of Schweinfurt and Black Thursday are carved too deeply for that. Instead, the air campaign has become integrated. Bombers, fighters, reconnaissance, logistics, each part reinforcing the other. At 2 a.m, the first formations cross the English coast. Below them, the channel is a vast black sheet, broken only by faint white wakes. Hundreds of ships move silently toward Normandy. Daniel presses his forehead lightly against the cold window. He cannot see the fleet clearly, but he senses its scale. He feels the weight of what is coming. Above and around the bomber stream, Mustangs sweep ahead. Walker's squadron flies in loose formation, scanning for any sign of German night fighters or early morning interceptors. Radar stations along the French coast detect movement, but German air response is scattered. Months of sustained bombing have reduced aircraft production, strained fuel supplies, and worn down experienced pilots. Airfields have been cratered repeatedly, communication lines disrupted. This does not mean there is no danger. Flak still rises over targets in France. Searchlights stab at the sky. A German night fighter appears briefly on Walker's radar scope before vanishing into cloud. Daniel's bomber reaches its assigned rail junction near Caen just before dawn. The horizon glows faintly orange. Bomb bay doors open. The cold air rushes in again. Steady, the bombardier says. The bombs fall toward tracks and switching yards that would otherwise carry reinforcements toward the beaches. Moments later, explosions ripple across the rail lines. Smoke climbs upward, mixing with morning mist. As the sun begins to rise on June 6, 1944, the invasion is underway. On the beaches below, Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juneau, Sword, soldiers wade into surf under fire. But above them, the sky looks different from the skies over Schweinfurt a year earlier. German aircraft appear only in small numbers, scattered, unable to mount the kind of concentrated assault that once devastated unescorted bomber streams. Walker spots 2 German fighters attempting to approach the coastline at low altitude. He and his wingman intercept quickly. The engagement is brief. The German aircraft break off. For the first time since he began flying escort, Walker senses near dominance. Not because the enemy has vanished, but because the balance has shifted decisively. Daniel circles west after completing his drop. He sees smoke rising from inland targets and faint flashes from the beaches. He cannot make out individual men below, only the scale of movement. He thinks back to August 1943, to the belief that bombers alone could end the war quickly, to the shock of watching aircraft fall in flames with no escort in sight. The air war did not unfold the way planners first imagined. Enemy industry proved resilient. Air defenses proved deadly. The cost forced painful change. New aircraft like the long-range Mustang extended protection deep into hostile skies. Fighter tactics shifted from passive escort to aggressive control. Targeting evolved from single factories to entire systems. Fuel, transport, aircraft production. It was adaptation born from loss. As Walker turns back toward England, fuel running low, he looks down once more at the vast armada below, ships stretching across the channel, the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe. Above them, Allied aircraft patrol in layered patterns, bombers returning, fighters weaving, transports carrying paratroopers farther inland. The sky is not silent, it is controlled. Daniel's B-17 crosses the English coastline hours later. The landing is smooth. He removes his oxygen mask and inhales humid summer air. Ground crews gather around returning aircraft. Some cheer quietly. Others simply nod, already preparing for the next sortie. The easy air war they once expected never came. Instead, there was fire, loss, adjustment, persistence. The bombers burned over Germany. Crews paid the price for early assumptions. Yet from those burning formations came new strategy, new technology, and a deeper understanding of what modern air war demanded. Victory in the air was not a single dramatic moment. It was earned slowly, painfully, by learning faster than the enemy. As night falls again over England on June 6, 1944, the invasion continues. The war is far from over. But the sky above Normandy, once contested, uncertain, and deadly, now tells a different story. Control of the air was not given. It was fought for, revised, and secured through hard lessons written in smoke.